Hi everyone, I'm Q Fang, lead concept artist on the Overwatch team. Our newest tank hero, Ramattra, is our first tempo tank.
I thought Sigma was the tempo tank. I mean, he's always looking for the melodies. Anyway, hilarious jokes aside, Ramattra seems to be one of the most, if not the most complex character in the game, and being a tank with multiple forms, if you aren't well versed into exactly what his abilities are and how to use them, not only will you be terrible at playing him, but you also won't be able to counter him when he's on the other team, which affects you even if you don't have any plans on playing the character. In other words, it's in your best interest to have a good understanding of Ramattra, and that's exactly what I'm here for. Now let's get to brass tacks, and the silly developer jargon of calling him a tempo tank really just means he has two different forms you can enter. Unfortunately, it's not that he has two different tempos of dubstep playing like Lucio. I know, I was disappointed too. Anyway, the first form you can enter is his Omnic form, which is ideal for medium range, while his Nemesis form is generally best used in close combat situations. We'll go over Omnic form first because this is what you'll be using the majority of the time, and within this form your primary weapon is the Void Accelerator, which is a projectile weapon kinda like Sojourn's gun with no fall off and an insanely high rate of fire. The difference between Sojourn and Ramattra in their weapon, however, is that Sojourn has a near one-shot kill with a right click, while in your Omnic form as Ramattra, you only have these challenging projectiles to do your mid-range damage. Don't get me wrong, it does good damage if you're hitting all your shots, but, you know, that's the thing. You won't hit all your shots. They're pretty challenging to hit, so your best bet is shooting at stationary targets, spamming at chokes, and trying to laser down enemies while they have a predictable pattern of movement. His first ability, which maps to your right click, is placing a Void Barrier, kinda like a Reinhardt shield at any distance up to 35 meters, which is pretty far, but the catch is that it only lasts for a duration of 4 seconds. So even though it has a hefty 1000 HP, it almost certainly is going to go down before they can do that much damage. What this intuitively means is that you can't just use this to protect your entire team while slowly pushing like you could with Reinhardt. You have to use it to cross challenging sightlines or to briefly protect you or your teammates from a very specific damage source, like a Widowmaker from a far distance or a soldier using his ultimate on a hard-to-reach platform. The key here is understanding just how fleeting this shield is, which forces you to be way smarter about how you place it to get value, because if you drop it at the wrong time or when it's not optimal, you'll have to wait a full 13 seconds before getting it back. Also, just for your information, Ramattra did release with a 15-second cooldown for this ability, but now more recently it's been brought down to 13 seconds. The more you practice with him, the better you'll be at predicting when are the most valuable times to drop your mini Reinhardt, and remember, this ability is only usable in Omnic form, so try to get some use out of it before switching over to Nemesis. This leads me to his next ability, Ravenous Vortex, which is available in both Omnic and Nemesis forms, and is pretty much just a grenade that creates an impact field after landing, which does a little bit of damage while slowing and pulling down enemies like Pharah and Lucio. Enemies caught in this field will have their move speed reduced by 40%, and the best way to describe it is that it's just a worse disruptor shot, which is Sojourn's slow ability, but that doesn't mean it's useless. You can use this ability to slow enemies down that are retreating, or to slow down a pesky Lucio that's hard to hit, or what I mainly use it for, which is throwing it at a tank's feet while they're slightly out of position, so you and your team can focus them before they get to safety. It's also really useful when your own team is retreating, as you can just throw it at your feet or at a choke point, because even though this ability doesn't do too much damage, enemies will rarely push into the slow themselves, so it's great at giving your team a little bit of space to run away just in case your team needs it. No good news for all you aspiring Ramattra players, his Nemesis form just had a massive buff to make it even better than it was, making his armor bonus that he gets when activating go from 150 additional armor to a whopping 225, which is a full 50% uplift, as well as him getting a 20% movement speed increase during Nemesis form, and having that speed buff while he's using his ultimate as well. Even before, Nemesis form was pretty good for getting big plays in specific scenarios, kinda like Doomfist, but now he's even more of a threat. Anyway, when he's in Nemesis form, instead of his usual medium range Void Accelerator, his primary fire is Pummel, which is a 60 damage punch-like projectile that you fire through enemies and shields that has a max range of 12 meters and does 100 damage per second. That also doesn't get absorbed by D.Va's defense matrix or Sigma's damage suck. And while Genji can block it with his deflect, he doesn't return the damage, making it a super powerful ability for pushing through tight areas with a lot of enemies bunched up. When you right click in Nemesis form, he can no longer drop a shield, but instead has a block ability which slows your movement down by 50% and reduces damage by 75, and doesn't have any cooldown as long as you're in Nemesis form. Now, while it doesn't block 100% of damage and doesn't really give you any specific benefit for absorbing damage like Doomfist does with his power block, it does give you the most defensive protection for you and your team against big damage if your Void Barrier isn't up, so sometimes when you can expect a lot of damage to be coming in, it might be worth it to change to your Nemesis form to be able to use his block because it doesn't have any kind of cooldown, again, as long as you're in Nemesis form. Keep in mind that within Nemesis form, his character model opens up and becomes quite a bigger target, so just because you have an additional 225 armor doesn't mean you're automatically a super tank, and often I see a lot of Ramattra players activating Nemesis and thinking they're invincible when they're really just a big target without a shield in front of them. The best times to activate Nemesis is when there are a bunch of enemies either close or bunched up in one area, as you can maximally benefit from using your pummel on grouped enemies as it does pierce shields and people, which not many abilities in the game currently do. As for his overpowered ultimate, it's called Annihilation, and firstly switches you to your Nemesis form and does 30 damage per second to every enemy within a 13-meter radius, and as long as you do have even a single enemy that you're doing damage to and is within your area of effect, you'll actually freeze your ultimate duration timer of 3 seconds until no more enemies are nearby. This means that if you aren't doing any damage to enemies and they're far away, you'll run out of your measly 3-second timer very quickly, and to use this ability with any kind of efficacy, you need to make sure that there's enough enemies around, or at least an enemy or two that you know won't be able to teleport or fly away too quickly, else you'll be at risk of wasting your ultimate. The fairly massive radius makes it a game changer on contested points, as it can often reach nearly the size of an entire control point, so as long as your healers are able to read the room and focus on healing you, you should be able to have a massive impact. Keep in mind that any time you pop this ultimate, your enemies will almost immediately do one of two things. Either ultra focus you, so you get killed before you cause too much harm, and believe me, when the entire team knows you're ulting, they can very well kill you with some focus fire when you have no shield and you're running around like a massive shoot at me sign. I was too excited. Or just as often, players who see Ramattra ulting will immediately just try to scurry away around corners or behind barriers. The second they do this and every enemy is out of your area of effect, that timer will be running down faster than you think, so typically this is the strategy that most teams go for, so keep that in mind whenever you pop it. Try not to use it when there's only fast squishy heroes like Lucio or Tracer, as they'll likely be able to escape you and make you waste your ult before you even get the chance to type out obscenities in the chat, and also make sure you have a healer or two nearby so that you can actually be sustained instead of immediately being bursted down. This is a very high impact ult, so a lot of players are going to be focusing on you, and if you have healers supporting you, it'll become so much more effective. As for when you should and when you should not be playing Ramattra, he's easily one of the most versatile tanks, so against most heroes like Reinhardt, Sigma, Orisa, you'll probably have an easy enough time if you know what you're doing, but playing against Roadhog or Winston will probably cause you too many problems to make Ramattra really a good pick. Roadhog is pretty powerful in this meta, as I predicted last season, and is really powerful against specifically Ramattra because his shield duration is far too short to make him not at a massive constant danger of being hooked away from his team and immediately finished off, which makes the matchup constantly too one-sided. As for Winston alongside a dive comp or even alone is too good at diving your healers and backline, and because Ramattra doesn't really have any kind of mobility or a good stun like other tanks, Winston tends to just get a lot more value out of the matchup. Oh, and since the Doom buff, he's been pretty good against pretty much all of the tanks, including Ramattra, and seeing as, again, Ramattra has no good CC and terrible movement, for now I'd say it's best to avoid playing Ramattra against Doomfist. I expect to see Doomfist getting some considerable changes in the future, so for how long that advice lasts, I have no idea. In summary though, Ramattra is a really great tank to pick against pretty much everyone but Doomfist, Roadhog, and Winston. Now finally, in order to master Ramattra, the key is to always be conscious of your health and the enemy's positioning and hero choice, as you are one of the most prone tanks to being bursted down quickly and can get caught out very easily. Without a reliable shield or stun, you'll have to play smarter than you would on pretty much any of the other tanks, so if you're mindful and have good game sense, Ramattra can easily become the most effective tank in the game. Well, I mean, maybe not easily, because you need the game sense and the mindfulness and the practice and stuff, but you get what I mean. You will get punished more as this tank than literally any other tank for improper ability usage, largely because of his lack of mobility, so make sure you're cycling your abilities in ways that don't leave you out to dry. If you didn't notice, he also has generally longer cooldowns than most of the other tanks, which allows him to have high impact abilities that, if you constantly misuse, will make him the most vulnerable and weak tank in the game. The reason I'm saying this is to really drill in your mind this mentality, as if you've played Roadhog, Reinhardt, Orisa, Ball, or, pretty much any of the other tanks for hundreds of hours, you're probably much less mistake averse as you'll need to be with Ramattra. He's pretty damn hard, but the value you can get out of him in clutch situations is immense, so if you keep all that in mind while practicing, he can probably snatch you much more value than pretty much any other tank. Other than Roadhog, of course. No one can topple Roadhog as the GOAT. Anyway, that's pretty much everything I have to say for Ramattra. I realize there weren't really any videos that give a simple and easy perspective on the character, so I thought why not make one myself after the recent buff. And if you have any questions, leave them in the comments. Let me know what other stuff you want to see. Appreciate you for watching. Subscribe if you're new, and I'll see all of you in the next one. It's been Shakes. Have a lovely rest of your day. What a good team.
Oh shit!
Alright, I got it.
Stupid Ash.
Dude, do they have a Bastion?
You ever gonna put up your damn shield?
Dude, I get cracked because I saved the entire team.
Holy shit.
Look at that. Look at this.
Oh, I you're behind the barricade.
Fucking shield or shield, you
Look.
asshole.
We have so many. Triple.
No,
Come
no,
on.
no,
Come
no,
on.
no.
Come on. That's better than a
Everyone
shield.
make sure that's not play the game.
No. A triple is better than the shield. You gotta
Everyone make
respect
sure
it.
that's not play the game.
No. Nobody else get any more. Make sure you only get one kill at a time, guys. Count your kills slowly. Very slowly. We don't want to be throwing now.